I met a man working for a corporation in Yangon, Myanmar. He made a lot more than the typical earner, who makes about $95 a month. When his payday came, because there was no checks or real banking infrastructure, he had two very large piles of cash that were pushed at him. This was back in 2013. For the past 10 years, Myanmar has seen terrific development spurred by China's plans to build two new ports connected to the Belt and Road Initiative. As China faces the middle-income trap and increasing international pressure to move high-tech manufacturing out of China, South and Southeast Asian countries like India and Vietnam aim to raise a new technical labor force that can produce goods at a cheaper cost and lift their massive populations out of poverty. Still, countries like Myanmar have a long way to go before they can capture the market. Developing countries need to effectively educate and train their young workforces, but this task is extremely difficult. Myanmar's 10 million students are divided into classes where the teacher ratio is publicly mandated at one teacher per 40 students, yet even this is not often the case. Locals indicate that it is not uncommon to see 50 to 80 students per teacher, often classes having to be split into two different rooms. Students have very little. Desks, chairs, textbooks, they're all shared. And so are AR-capable smartphones. AR, or augmented reality, a term coined by Caudell and Mizell, is a form of mixed reality where real-life images are overlaid or augmented with virtual imagery. Most smartphones can utilize AR provided they have updated cameras and, for some cases, GPS. Families in Myanmar typically own one smartphone. Hla Hla Win, a former student from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, returned to her home country and decided to amp up their textbooks with AR models. How can AR be implemented into textbooks? QR codes. Scanned, snapped, and displayed on students' smartphones, complicated models no longer need the meticulous explanations words often can't explain. Imagine describing how the cell works like a factory using only words. Can you imagine, layer by layer, stripping down the cell membrane, opening up the rough endoplasmic reticulum to look through the little pores and into the nucleoplasm where little threads of DNA float and condense into chromosomes ready for cell division? Hard to imagine? Of course it is. Augmented reality can supplement these explanations with embodied cognition, or working visualizations that reduce cognitive load and enhance working memory tremendously. AR is also useful in helping students see the unseen by directing attention towards overlooked objects, patterns, and phenomena which support students' process-based thinking. In Myanmar, the textbooks by the national government are in black and white. Images are sparse and few classrooms have access to TVs or other tools to present information, yet every textbook could theoretically be filled with QR codes, whereas each code displays a colorful 2D or 3D image or video wherever it is needed to support understanding. Anyone with a smartphone could transform their boring old textbook into a much more engaging, effective learning tool. Hla Hla Win designed a way to take advantage of universal internet access and the Myanmar Ministry of Education's surprising pivot in educational policy. Myanmar is trying to reform its entire curriculum to better train its workforce and capture international investment. Yet the Ministry of Education was skeptical when they first heard of Hla Hla's edtech startup, 360. 360 has created a line of AR science products ranging from electric circuit builders to physics displays to elements that react and form molecules when placed next to one another. This, and a variety of AR English and science products, convinced the Myanmar government that printing AR into their textbooks would be affordable, scalable, and beneficial to students. Hla Hla and 360 have since made a deal with the national government to implement AR into all of their English and science textbooks. So far, 360 has printed English textbooks for grades 1, 2, 3, and 6, as well as grade 10 biology, chemistry, and physics. The app has other useful features, including summaries of chapter key vocabulary, highlights, multimedia, exercises and tests with multiple choice, fill in the blank, open response questionnaires, all of which are fed right back to the teacher to inform instruction. Currently, 360 has 4 million registered users on its English app, but over 200,000 customers paying for their AR box sets related to both English and science. Their goal is to help Myanmar ready its workforce to take on the high-skilled labor demands of the future. Since 2000, GDP has increased tenfold for this often overlooked South Asian nation. Does this AR technology actually work? Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning and Sweller's cognitive load theory provide the theoretical frameworks to make sense of AR's potential. As mentioned, external representations support computational offloading, re-representation, or graphical constraining, reducing learners' cognitive load when making sense of otherwise complex text-based information. Recently, these theories have been put to the test. Dr. Bertrand Schneider and Dr. Ilian Radu investigated the effectiveness of AR in the academic setting and found mixed results. In a study using AR in physics, the duo found that AR does not produce better conceptual understanding and retention. However, significant gains were found in AR's motivational and self-efficacy building qualities, particularly those affecting STEM attitudes, exactly what Myanmar's youth needs to transition to high-tech manufacturing. These results align with similar findings on engagement and motivation from other experts in the field. Although Dr. Schneider's study points to the novelty effect, that is, the newness of AR being the potential cause for motivation, one of his later studies disproves this. In Dr. Schneider's study on AR in the collaborative learning environment, a control group used a limited version of AR that showed no benefit over a more collaboratively integrated version. In his study, Dr. Schneider measured participants' pre- and post-test results, as well as qualitative observations such as perceived learning, movement, and collaborative contributions. The results of his study were promising for the future of AR, particularly in group and collaborative settings. His findings suggest that when AR is used appropriately, motivation increased, learning gains doubled, more productive and synchronous collaboration occurred, and AR had the ability to prevent against the free rider effect, common in group work. The free rider effect occurs when one member of a group takes on a passive role and depends on a second member to lead and complete the work. Dr. Schneider concluded that AR has the ability to create an overlap between the task space and the social communication space, encouraging contributions from all participants by creating additional opportunities to participate in the problem-solving activity and reduce dominance in communication across participants. Additionally, his study proved that AR can increase learners' ability to ground communication, increase pair awareness and balance contributions, as well as provide learners with rapid feedback, reduce cognitive load, and enabled faster cycles of action and reflection, thus contributing to increased collaborative problem-solving efficiency. Together, these factors led to increased learner agency, which may account for the significant increase in learning gains, as well as learners' better ability to make relevant group contributions. The application of AR can aid collaborative problem-solving in environments where learners don't have access to the same information. For example, a group lab with a small computer screen, or where learners have different roles in object manipulations. At scale, AR has the potential to effectively transform collaborative group work, as well as reduce cognitive load by making complicated explanations conceptually digestible to the average learner, and improve learner motivation, agency, and self-efficacy. How can AR be used in the K-12 educational context? First to note, there are two different types of AR, vision-based and location-based AR. Location-based, or location-aware, refers to GPS-enabled AR, similarly used in the popular game Pokemon Go. As learners reach a location, the app displays an AR visualization for that specific location. This can take on the form of a historical protest, augmented over the exact location it occurred decades ago. GPS-enabled AR has the potential to give old landmarks new notice and embed them with additional information, seeing the unseen. The benefit to this approach is that it can contextualize, direct, and apply learning towards authentic environments. As researchers Dr. Matt Riley and Dr. Chris Deedy state, educational AR affords location-specific information, just-in-time instruction and scaffolding, increased self-efficacy and tenacity, and greater ease of collaboration and of authoring. Learners can engage in inquiry-based problem-finding through an interactive, dynamic, contextualized learning experience that fosters near transfer to later activities in the real world. Professor of Second Language Acquisition, Dr. Stephen Thorne from Portland State University, has used AR in his language learning classrooms to create more authentic environments, where language can be used collaboratively and with purpose. Dr. Thorne likes to send his students on narrative-based scavenger hunts to engage them in rewilding, that is, repopulating the ecology of the learning experience by having learners engage with their environments and produce a more complicated latticework for understanding a language. This is a form of incidental learning, particularly beneficial for language learning as it simulates and exploits ubiquitous aha moments that occur in natural language learning processes. Dr. Thorne's method could be applied to secondary language classrooms in order to rewild and take language learning out of the inauthentic classroom space. Dr. Nicole Mills, French professor at Harvard University, uses virtual reality to contextualize vocabulary in this way. Contextualization allows for the binding and anchoring of new vocabulary within specific, culturally relevant images, as, according to Dr. Mills, language and culture should always be taught together. Like VR, AR has the potential to similarly bind and anchor vocabulary when language learning tasks are rewilded in more authentic contexts. The ability of AR to enable self-directed and task-based learning provides important implications for placing students at the center of their learning, yet location-based AR is not optimal in the K-12 educational setting, as most education is restricted to inside classrooms. Vision-based AR is more easily integrated into the classroom, as this form of AR augments visualizations over existing images, similar to filters on popular social media apps like Snapchat. This version of AR requires only a QR code or relative surface to snap visualizations on. This is the kind of AR that HlaHla uses in her textbooks and box products. As mentioned, vision-based AR can decrease cognitive load by chunking conceptually difficult information, minimizing the reliance on memory, focusing the use of cognitive resources on other tasks. Learners are better able to use this freed up mental space to build better cognitive maps and improve comprehension of spatial relationships, like those complicated diagrams that you don't remember from high school. In more collaborative settings, vision-based AR has multiple affordances, one of which involves the presentation of multiple, complementary perspectives, as was witnessed in one of Dr. Schneider's studies. This ability to see multiple perspectives facilitates the creation of roles which closely resemble authentic science practices. This form of identity play allows for social negotiation, a more educationally relevant and immersive style of learning. According to PhD in Learning Design and Technology David Squire, roles 1 invite students to apply pre-existing personal experiences to the problem-solving process, 2 provide a context for argumentations, 3 create a sense of responsibility among the students who are experts in their domain, and 4 enable an active problem-solver identity among students. Able to play roles, students can become further immersed in the educational content if the experience is embedded within strong narratives and relevance. Dr. Chris Deedy provides a theoretical example of how AR can make education immersive in other ways. He writes, "Showing a 3D model of a human heart illustrating blood flow is useful. Immersing students in a virtual setting where they are applying knowledge of the heart to save the lives of computer-based agents is much more motivating." The greatest affordance of both location-based and vision-based AR is its scalability. One AR model can be reproduced through a QR code printed hundreds of thousands of times. Anyone with a smartphone and related app can project that AR model onto their smartphone. Vision-based AR representations can be viewed offline, anytime, anywhere, allowing for ubiquitous, just-in-time learning. Location-based AR is more limited, considering only certain experiences can occur in certain places, yet applications like EcoMobile offer more general location-based AR where learners can explore ecosystem-related information augmented around local ponds and lakes. AR is limited in educational effectiveness if not integrated into the greater educational experience appropriately. Students are easily overwhelmed when confronted with managing AR's collaborative and inquiry-based complexities. Additional supports are required, as 2 or 3 facilitators may be needed to conduct the experience in case students encounter technical errors. AR should not be taught alone. Research in AR and VR immersive environments suggests the PRA model for using AR in the classroom. PAR, or Plan, Act, Reflect. In Plan, students must be primed for the experience, taught the context and key vocabulary as well as an understanding to what the purpose is for using this technology. In Act, students use the technology. And in Reflect, students reflect on their metacognition, linking what they've learned to relative context to ensure transfer. AR should not be treated as an easy fix towards visualizing complicated texts. As indicated by John Dewey, adding irrelevant details to a boring textbook to generate interest may interfere with the recall of important information. Printed images and other non-digital narratives and rote teaching methods may be as effective and more efficient than immersive media. Even the integration of relevant details should be done strategically. Simply integrating images and video over existing learning tools may hinder retention. There is substantial evidence indicating that multiple representations have caused learning issues as learners have difficulty translating between representations. The deft, or Design Functions Tasks Framework, suggests that representations should be used minimally and chosen specifically to help explain more complicated concepts. When appropriate, AR visualizations should be co-present and dynamically linked to complement related information so that learners benefit from the advantages that each provide. Allowing AR and traditional representations of information to aid and differentiate learning, educators can maximize the effectiveness of AR's integration into the classroom. Limitations in practical functionality may occur as some smartphones, particularly in developing countries, are cheap, outdated, and prone to error. Unfocused cameras, motion blur, uneven lighting can create difficulties with object recognition and tracking. Required to hold a camera in one hand while observing and making notes with the other may prove distracting for most students. Additionally, setup might be complicated, particularly for families who have just obtained their first smartphones, or for educators who are also new to this new technology. AR is also limited in its ability to track multiple faces, capture motion, and stop drifting, which is when an augmented image drifts off camera instead of snapping into place. Location-based AR also has its limitations, as the best available public GPS is accurate at about 15 feet, whereas only military-grade GPS allows for more accurate location-based AR that could be better taken advantage of in the classroom. New SLAM technology, or simultaneous localization and mapping, as well as deep learning and neural nets have enabled smartphones to recognize objects and coordinate information to better match the augmented imagery over real location-based images. As pointed out by Dr. Squire's research into AR's trajectory, and confirmed by other researchers such as Dr. Stephen Thorne, there are very few empirical studies about AR's effectiveness in regards to online learning in conventional learning spaces. Due to the lack of research, shaky functionality, and limited awareness, AR has mostly been used as an intervention and less as a transformative technology. A few apps like 3D Bear provide full curriculum for teachers, but even these do not last beyond a few weeks and are only loosely tied to Common Core competencies. As of now, most K-12 AR activities stand as hour-long interventions or improvements upon existing independent and collaborative tools. Despite these limitations, AR has the potential to completely transform K-12 education. Affordability and scalability may be the most encouraging aspects of AR's prospects. As stated, a single visualization can be reproduced on thousands, if not millions, of separate one-to-one devices. AR may also replace the need for expensive materials in science labs by creating effective simulations as exemplified by 360. The potential to revolutionize and expand upon the accessibility of virtual science equipment will be particularly beneficial for those in low-income settings where traditional physical equipment may not be available. Compared to VR, AR does not require the creation of a complete virtual environment. QR codes are cheap, they're easy to print, only the model design and app maintenance have a significant price tag. AR has the opportunity to expand further into the K-12 space as apps begin to move off of app stores, which have historically taken around 30% from sales. There is a rising movement towards WebXR, and in this case, WebAR, that allows AR displays through a web browser. WebAR is accessible from any device with an internet connection and it requires no download. However, WebAR mediums perform worse than downloadable apps due to the processing limits of individual web browsers. User-generated content may further push AR into widespread public adoption. Authoring tools are becoming more prevalent and more accessible. Currently, AR authoring tools like Google SketchUp 8 and Esperiant Creator allow authors to create their own models which can be exported in over a dozen universally accepted file formats. The recent availability of LiDAR cameras in iPhones will enable users to scan, edit, and upload 3D models, increasing the variety and affordability of AR use. In-app authoring tools are also becoming the norm. Some apps allow learners to augment old images over modern images in their settings. The Community College of Beaver County, Pennsylvania allows students to publish their own auras around campus, overlaying buildings, directories, and other important landmarks with video and graphics that can be shared via social media. This, alongside other virtual landscape marking tools, can provide learners with ample opportunities to flood the virtual space with additional content, historical time-lapse augmentation, and their own creative task-based games. As shown again and again, AR has massive transformative potential in the K-12 education space. The world's education market is expected to spend more than $5.3 billion USD on AR and VR technology by 2023, while a second report estimates about 6 billion USD. This comes on the heels of expected news that Apple will release their AR glasses within the next few years, while developing countries are scaling up their existing smartphone use. UNESCO predicted in 2018 that there were at least 1.75 billion smartphone users worldwide. As of 2018, there were an estimated 762 million AR-capable smartphones in the world, with an estimated 158 million people currently using the AR functionality. As empirical evidence grows, as does the availability and understanding of how to effectively utilize AR in K-12 classrooms, AR can aid and enhance traditional pedagogical tools and experiences like textbooks and collaborative work. AR is scalable to a massive degree, as a single model could theoretically be viewed by any one of the world's 762 million AR-capable smartphone users, and their families. Despite its limitations, AR has the potential to improve traditional education by making education more motivating, conceptually clear, all while improving students' sense of agency and self-efficacy. In terms of technologies that teachers want to see in their classrooms, AR falls to the bottom of the list. But the day is coming, where quite literally, AR might be right on top of it. Thank you.